And welcome back to ASL 201, Learning Advanced Squad Leader. I'm Russ Gifford, and I'm happy to be with you again. Last time we were using mortars and learning how to use to-hit numbers with support weapons, the squad-based weapons. This time we're going to learn how to use guns for a to-hit number. So we're going to be applying many of the same lessons we learned in the last one, and you're going to see how that relates to guns. So our goals for this session, I want to learn about using guns, the to-hit number, the modified to-hit number. We're going to delve a little deeper into target types and their target type resolutions, and we'll talk a little bit about using HE, high explosive. So, ready? We're also going to learn how to fire a gun and how to fire a gun against an infantry target type. Now that's important to remember. Last time, were we using the infantry target type? No, we were using area because mortars always use area fire. So the big difference this time, we're going to be learning how to fire a gun against the infantry target type. Alright, first of all, guns are on 5/8 inch counters. They're the big counters. Here's the other big difference then. When you're on a 5/8 inch counter, you can only fire through the covered arc. And notice I've got a little yellow arrow there pointing out which one is the covered arc. And remember, a covered arc, just like we learned with machine guns, it's the first 2 hexes beyond that vertex, the one to the left and to the right. Then it goes to 3 hexes wide. Then it goes to 4 hexes wide. So when we're talking about a covered arc, your target would have to fall within that covered arc when you shoot, when you fire, right? Now, they have to be possessed by a crew. If they're a gun on a 5/8 inch counter, they've got to have a crew, and that's the 228 counter that has to possess some. Now, they can be fired by a squad. They could be fired, I think, by a half squad, but you will pay penalties. They're not trained to use it, so they'd be unqualified, and that would be a +2. And we'll learn how to look up those penalties in a few moments. Now, we're all about really doing it here, so it's the German prep fire phase. You have a 228 crew that's possessing that 75 long anti-tank gun down there, and they want to fire it at the American squad all the way over here in EE6. Can they do that? Now, EE6 is a stone building, by the way. Can they right now fire at that unit? Which vertex is that covered arc at? It's not facing the right direction, is it? So if the fire has to come out through the covered arc, they can't hit it right now unless they do what? Change their covered arc, and they can change their covered arc as part of their fire. But they can only fire within a covered arc, have to change the covered arc facing then to do that, but to do so they have to pay a penalty. And that penalty is on table C6, and we'll get to that. So here we go. They've changed their covered arc and they're going to go ahead and fire at this moment. And it's straight down the spine, no problem there, and it's prep fire, so there's no movement to worry about or anything else. So here we go. Well, the one thing we do have to do before we start is decide. We know we're going to use a to-hit die roll because, meaning we've got to secure the hit on the item, but we have to choose what our target type is. So we have 3 target types. We have a vehicle target type, an infantry target type, and an area target type. We saw the area one, and we actually saw where you see these at last time using the mortars, didn't we? Here's the key. If you're firing at a vehicle, we're going to use that as a to-kill die roll with AP. If we're firing at infantry, we're going to use the infantry fire table, and we're doing that with HE. Now, in reality, you can do it with AP if you have no other choice, but it will not be very effective. Now, we already played with the area type using a mortar. Realize you can voluntarily choose to use area fire with HE with either of these targets, either a vehicle or an infantry. Again, just like AP against infantry not being very, AP being armor piercing, not being very effective, HE against an armored vehicle is not going to be very effective either, although it can have its uses. But right now, we have an infantry target. We've already tried area. We're going to use the IFT. We're going to shoot HE at that unit. You agree? Well, you can always do this yourself too afterwards. That's the key. We're teaching you how to do these things for yourself. So, just like last time, if we're doing this time it's direct fire, so we get some options. We go to that chart C3. Now remember, they have these as separate charts, but they're also on the back of your QDRC chart. It's the blue area charts, bottom half of it, and the C3 table is first. And notice right there is the make your choice up in the upper left corner of this table. Do you want vehicle? Do you want infantry? Do you want area? Notice if you were firing a mortar or you were firing smoke, you have to use area fire. Now, we're not using area this time. We're using what? We're firing at infantry, so we're going to fire at infantry. Now, the next step then, so now our example of direct fire, we've decided the target type is infantry and the distance is 8 hexes. We can count that out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Don't count our hex, we do count their hex, right? 8 hexes away on the infantry target type. Yeah, straight down the spine. So we already know it's on the infantry line and it's on the 7 to 12 line, correct? So on the C3 at a range of 7 to 12 there were two numbers. One was black and one was red. Which one will we use? Well, the nationalities chart will tell us that Germans always use a black to hit number. Russians always use red. Well, we're Germans, so we're going to use the black to hit number. Back to this and take a look. So the black number is what? That's the 7, isn't it? And when we look at the gun and ammo based hit modifiers now that we're on C4, what type of a gun was it? Well, it was an L. It was a long-barreled gun, better at longer range. Notice all after we get past 12 hexes, it gets a +1 to hit all the way along, doesn't it? So it would be better at a longer range. But we're within 8 hexes. That comes out as a 0. So we started out, we've got the C3 was a 7 to hit, and we modify that with what's on C4 to get our hit number. What is our hit number for these two? We found out that our final modified to hit number is 7. So now that we've got our modified to hit number, we have to find out what die roll modifiers we're going to add to our die roll to see what happens. Now, we did all of this with the mortars, didn't we? The only difference was mortars didn't have a choice. They had to be on the area fire, and thus they were going to be halved. Now we're going through the same routine, even though it's a gun versus a mortar. The difference is we got choices, didn't we? But all these modifiers will work the same way. Okay, so we're on chart C5 now. Now we've moved away from the finding out what our to hit number is to where the next two tables will help us find out what our die roll modifiers, what we're going to add to the dice we roll, and compare it to that to hit number. If it's equal to or less than that modified to hit number, we'll get the hit. If it is more than, we'll miss. So it's all about the modifiers now. First two pieces, all about the to hit number. Next two charts, all about what we add to the die roll to compare to that to hit number. So looking down this list, we see A, B, C, C1, C2, C3, etc., right? And I don't want to overlook this. Notice there's the little fine print off to the left of C1, C2. Remember, those were the ones that said, oh, that little cross is telling us it doesn't apply to area fire, so we didn't even look at them last time. The little L is telling us it doesn't apply to uh, light anti-tank weapons, things like that. So we always have to be aware of those pieces. Not everything applies to every type of gun or weapon. We're not firing area this time, so we will have to worry. Now, we notice the first one is about covered arc change. Now, we are going to come back to that because we have to figure that out. But I want to just look at this. B, we can quickly go past it because it says fire in the advancing fire phase without entering a hex. Oh, well, that doesn't apply to us. Perfect example, though, if our crew moved into where the gun was and possessed it and wanted to fire that turn, it would pay a penalty, wouldn't it? Okay. Bounding fire. Well, bounding fire is all about our tanks moving up and firing their main armament. We don't have to worry about any of those, do we? C3, firing a light anti-tank weapon. Pfft, we don't care. This isn't a light anti-tank weapon. All right, motion nonstop firer. Again, that's about those vehicles shooting on the move. Forget it. Not our problem. Pinned firer, or if it's spotted fire. Well, I guess technically that could apply to us, but it doesn't. It doesn't because we're not pinned, right? Okay. Fire within hex. Nope, doesn't count. Intensive fire. That's when you say, oh, I've got to do this. I'll risk my break number. Forget it. Don't have to worry about it. This isn't intensive fire. Deliberate immobilization. Something you can think about later when you're shooting at that tank that's about to run you over. Okay. Captured non-qualified infantry. That's where if instead of a crew we had an infantry member here, we would have, if it were a captured gun, we'd have a +2. If it were non-qualified, we'd have a +2. But if it were captured and not by a crew, in other words, our squad captured it, we'd have a +4, wouldn't we? But none of that applies, and here's that buttoned-up AFV. Well, we're not that either. We don't care. The only one who applies to us when we go down that whole list was that first one. So let's go look at it a little closer. Firing outside covered arc. Per hex spine changed. We did change the covered arc, didn't we? It was facing one way at the start of the phase. We said we're going to fire, and in doing so, we cranked it one hex spine over, so it applies. Looking a little closer, blowing this up, it's telling us T, and then first spine, second spine, third spine. If I had moved a turreted gun 3 spines, we only moved 1. So if we moved it 180 degrees around, we would pay a +3, wouldn't we? If it were turreted. But look at ours. We don't have a turret. This is a gun, right? Well, we need to see which one applies because, to be honest, some guns do come with a turret, especially anti-aircraft guns. Where they've got to pivot around trying to follow that item. So, on this list, we see turret, slow turret, and no turret, right? Let's go look. And by the way, also notice, if you're going to pivot and you are in buildings, a woods hex, a building hex, or a rubble hex, whatever applies up there, you multiply it ×2. That would get very bad. When you go look at your board, you'll find on board 1, we are definitely in a clear hex. So while there can be advantages to putting yourself in a building or woods, you can also see right now there can be huge disadvantages if your enemy can flank you, right? Where you'd have to turn. So turrets apply to both tanks, AFVs, and guns. If you have no circle, that is a no turret. And notice, we got no circle there, don't we? So we now know we're an NT, and when we looked at that, that was a +3, wasn't it? Here's that example of an AA gun, though. See the white circle? That's showing you this is on a turret. Now, I don't think I have any examples of guns with a slow turret, but there's an example of an AFV that's it's a thin white box. Also realize there are thick white boxes on AFVs, and you can have restricted slow turrets, which is the one you see over there on the far side. Okay, so in our case, We know the only modifier, it's a modified to hit of 7, but we now have a +3 die roll modifier for a covered arc change because we only changed one spine, didn't we? And that first spine for no turret was a +3. We do not double it because we're not in rubble. If we were in one of those hexes behind us and tried to do this, that's when it would double, wouldn't it? If we were in the building and had tried to do this, it would have doubled. Okay, that took care of firer based. Now we got to worry about the die roll modifiers that apply to our target. So chart C6 is about the target, and again, off to the left, we see those little symbols that tell us what the items are good for. And by the way, if you were looking at this, those symbols show up in a little white box right below these charts on your actual charts. All right, so when you're looking at this, now notice target based. Well, the first one says moving or motion, vehicle or dashing. Well, wait a minute. Anything about movement's not going to apply, is it? Because this is the German prep fire. The American can't possibly have moved. So J, none of the J's apply. Now we know our guy is not concealed, so he is just a straight K. He doesn't get the K, right? Point blank would be if he were within a 2 hex or a 1 hex range of us. Point blank would be 1 hex. There's also a modifier for 2 hexes. Doesn't count, we're 8 hexes away. Bore-sighted, if you were a scenario defender, in other words, you'd set up on the board and your opponent has to bring all his guys on, that means they weren't around. You might have done target practice at a hex to truly bore sight. Look, make sure you were dead on and set for that hex, and then when you moved into it, when the enemy moved into it, you'd be able to fire with a -2, right? That doesn't apply. But N is something that will apply soon. It's an acquired target. Doesn't apply now, but each time you take a shot, up to 2 shots, you get a -1 acquisition. That does not apply right now because we've not taken any shots at these guys. Target size modifier, that's if we're shooting at a vehicle or a gun. Doesn't count for firing at the infantry. But the next one does apply, doesn't it? The next one is TEM. And it will apply. What's the TEM? They're in a stone building. That's a +3, isn't it? It is. No line of sight hindrance, but if it were raining, if it were twilight, if somebody had put smoke in between us, if there was a in-season wheat hex, or grain hex I should say, or orchard hex, those could apply as hindrances that we'd have to pay, but none of those do. The only one we've got is this one, Q, which is the TEM, and we said the terrain effects was a +3. Back to our example then. Basic to hit of 7. So that's the number we have to compare our die roll to. There were no modifications for the gun. So that gave us our modified to hit of 7. We, on the other hand, added a +3 by pivoting that non-turreted gun, and another +3 for the TEM. Wow, that's a +6. Can you roll a 1? It's a 2-sided die roll. Can you even get a hit? Question. Well, if it's saying that it's a +6, I'm asking a legitimate question. Do I have to roll to get a hit? And yes, I'd have to roll, but there's no way I can. Well, there is one way. And there are other reasons why we'd take this shot. First reason, we could get a hit, but it'd have to be a critical hit. Now, when we're firing on an infantry target type, a snake eyes, a 1-1, is usually a hit. But if your modifiers ever make that snake eyes still a miss, you'd have to roll a subsequent die to see if it's a hit. So if we rolled Snake Eyes, we could check out C3.7 and see what it would take to get a hit. And if I recall correctly, it's something like 1, it's a hit and a critical, 2, 3, it's just a regular hit, and above that, it's not. Now, you'll have to check that. I don't know, but that's why we have books, right? Okay. Now, the other reason why we might roll is because this is a 2 rate of fire gun. We could roll and get rate of fire, but there's a trick to that, too. We have to use conditional rate of fire for this shot, meaning that because we changed our covered arc, our rate of fire is not as good, and it goes down by 1 because we changed it. But no matter what, unless we break the gun, we'll get a -1 acquisition, and that can pay bonuses in the future, can't it? Okay. With that, then, we have reasons to roll. Let's roll. And boom, 1, 4 is a 5, plus 6 is an 11. Now remember, it's the original die roll that can cause gun malfunction, isn't it? Right? It's the original die roll that also creates the possibility of a critical hit. It's not with the modifiers. But you have to have the modifiers added to find out if you get the hit at all. 5 plus 6 is an 11. Is that a hit? No, that's greater than the modified to hit of 7, so we missed. But notice we got a colored die of 1, and since our gun is a 2 rate of fire, even though we add the +1 for changing covered arc, we still get rate of fire. We'll get to shoot again, don't we? Notice I get excited about these things. And conditional rate, there it is. And it's telling you it's at C2.5, so you'll be reading that after the class today. Now, since the gun had a 2, it's only 1 rate of fire. We've got the miss, but we've got another chance, don't we? Well, now, I need to talk about that. Last time we were firing the mortar, I was telling you, they had to have spent a point to get another, 2 points to get a chance, right? Because they were moving into woods, it spent 2 points. Well, that's because we were firing in the movement phase against a moving target. We were using defensive first fire. Those are triggered by movement points. Here, we're in our prep fire. We can keep firing until we run out of rate of fire, can't we? Note that's an optimist, because getting a colored die roll of 2 or 1 is still only, a 2 out of 6 chance, a 1 in 3 chance on your die rolls to get that. But we missed. Now we're going to get our acquisition. There it is, and that's telling us this guy's got a -1 because we took a shot, and whether we hit or whether we missed, we still get the acquisition. But now it's time, if we're going to fire, we're going to fire again right away. So, and since there are no better targets, we have to go through this again. But you're going to find out that we get a pretty big bonus now this time, more than just the -1. Do you remember the steps? Let's walk through them. You tell me. 8 hexes, infantry target type, right? There's the infantry. Could we change it to area if we wanted? Yes. But the problem with area is what? You lose rate of fire, right? You only get 1 shot. Secondly, it's a 7. We're already at a 7. The only advantage area would have is we wouldn't pay TEM. A lot of times that is worth doing. But in our case, we're doing this for the example. We're firing infantry. We have that option because they are infantry. What range is it? 7 to 12. So which one of those numbers does this turn out to be? There's a 7 and a 6. The 7 applies to who? It's black, so it's going to apply to the Germans in this case. If we were Russians firing, the red would apply, and that's the 6, isn't it? Now, that gets us our basic to hit number. We'd have to take the gun and ammo into account, and notice it's an L gun, but at range 7 to 12, it's 0. No biggie, right? We don't care. So it will still be a 7 to hit for a modified to hit number, isn't it? Yep, showing us right there. So what we really got out of that is that our modified to hit number stayed the same. So now you know, once you're doing this, if you got ready to fire, you can just chip right through this then the second shot, can't you? So as long as we didn't change the target type, the modified to hit will stay the same. And I said we could change our target type. Remember though, we are firing on the IFT table with HE. We could have switched over to area. It's not a vehicle, so we wouldn't have fired to that, moved over to that. So here's the difference, and you can see that on the note. The difference will be, since we're not firing area, if we get the hit, the TEM's already taken care of on the to hit die roll. It's not on the effect die roll as it is with area, right? So area is easier to get the hit, but harder to do something with it because it's halved and you add the TEM to the die roll. Infantry target type, if you get the hit, it's probably going to do something. So let's go. So we've got the modified to hit number. Next step is to figure out what? The die roll modifiers. First one we check is the firer based. Well, we're looking at all these. Firer outside covered arc hex bind changed. Well, wait a minute. We already know that B through L or B through I don't apply because we went through these last time. But here's our big bonus. A doesn't apply. We paid that with the first shot. Now we're lined up. So what's our modifier for A? Nothing. We have 0 modifier on this whole table, don't we? Woo! That's good news. So we're not changing our covered arc. We don't pay for it this time. And we jump ahead to C6. These are the target-based ones. We've already been through all those before. We know the only one that applies is N, the acquired target. And you saw in that acquisition counter I put on it, we had taken 1 shot, so we had a -1 to it. And then the TEM, same as we paid last time, a +3. Every once in a while I get just a little too crazy with my stuff. So N applies to offset that. It's a -1 and a +3, so it's going to be a net of what? Just a +2 die roll modifier. You ready to roll? Ooh, we got a 2 and we got a 3. 5, is 5 less than 7? Well, 5 plus 2, 6, 7. It's equal to it, isn't it? Does equal to count? I think it does. Equal to is equal to. It's to get the hit, less than or equal. Here's the other thing. Will we get rate of fire this time? We will, won't we? Because we did not change covered arc on this shot, so it's not conditional rate of fire, it's full rate of fire of a 2. We got the hit. Now we've got to resolve it. Where do we go to resolve it? This is your chance. Oh, I heard you. You said the IFT table, Russ. Well, kind of just like we did the mortar, right? We're going to the IFT, infantry fire table, because we use the infantry fire table, the infantry target type. So that's A7. Here we are. But now it's your turn again. What column am I going to use? Well, we need to know what size the gun was. The gun was a 75, so we have to find the column that has the HE equivalency of 75 or is not greater than the HE millimeters that we've got. So that comes out to be which column? These are the numbers that are past the slash. So you see 1 is 20 and 2 is 30. If I were firing with a 22 millimeter gun, I'd have to fire on the 1 column, wouldn't I? So if I'm firing with a 75, which column am I firing on? Got it. It's the 12, isn't it? Okay, now what's my modifier on this die roll? Well, it's a 75. It's on the 12. We got that. See, just in case you couldn't see where I was talking about, there's the 70. So it's a 12 IFT, and I'm going to roll now. and I rolled a 6. So what's my modifiers? Do I add TEM? I don't, do I? Because we already paid that on the to hit. This is not area. That's why we didn't have this the way we had to with our mortar. We're firing a straight 12 and we rolled a 6. What is that? That, my friend, is that ever popular 2 morale check. Right there it is. 2 morale check. Oh, we can take down those 747s with that, can't we? Now, why didn't we add the 10? This is a quiz. We did it with the mortars. Why didn't we add it this time? Because mortars are area fire, and the area fire always adds the TEM not to the to hit, but to the result. We had picked infantry target type, and now we see why. Could we have changed to the area target type between the first and second shot? Yes, we could have. Could go from infantry to area as well, right? Okay. Here we go. We have to resolve this. We know we've got a 2 morale check on the 747. That's our 747. You ready? Let's roll it. Uh-oh. Snake Eyes, +2. 2 plus 2 is a 4. He passes big time, doesn't he? Anything else happen? Oh yeah, Snake Eyes on a morale check, that's a heat of battle. Heat of battle applies to squads, half squads, and single man counters, right? So we got to roll again under 15.1 to see what we get. Rolled a 6. Rolled a 6. Now I'd have to look at my chart. I'm on the gray table here, and it says that a 6 is what? Ooh, 6 says bad things for us, great things for him. This is under heat of battle, which is 15.1. Now, big thing is it says less than or equal to 6 is a hero creation, but then the next one down tells us 5 to 8 is battle hardening. Well, here's something else we need to know. There are modifiers on the heat of battle. That modifier is he's an elite, which is a -1. So with that elite, it becomes a 5, and with a 5, it applies for both battle hardening and hero creation. Youch! There's Murphy. So, there's the hero. What's the battle hardening do? Battle hardening always takes your unit at whatever level he is to the next higher quality level. So if you had like a 447, which is a second line full squad for the Germans, they would become a first line full squad, which would be a 467. But in this case, the Americans are already an elite unit. There is nothing higher. They don't, these guys are paratroopers. What are you going to do? See, and we can tell because it says elite up there in the corner. That's where their class, their line unit quality is at. Well, what they do is they pick up their very own counter. It is a fanatic counter, and the counter says everything. It says +1 morale level. So now we don't have 747s we're facing. We have fanatic 747s. They're now the equivalent of an 8 morale. Oh, we are so lucky. By the way, there's also other things. They will no longer cower if when they roll dice. Isn't that wonderful? They won't cower. They don't need a PATC, a personal task check just to jump out on a tank that's going by. They'll love to jump out on the tank. So, with that, as a fanatic, and you'll find all the things that fanatics apply for on the back of the counter, we just made this unit tougher, didn't we? We gave him a hero, and we gave him a fanatic marker. Aren't we nice guys? What are we going to do then? Anything else we want to do? Should we just call it quits? Should we just go home? Now, look at our die roll. We got a 2. We're going to shoot again, aren't we? Remember to give him his fanatic, give him his hero, and the acquisition. That's actually a -2 acquisition. I don't seem to have one here handy. You and I know it's -2. We'd make sure we get it. We are so pumped up having just hit them, we're just going to shoot again. But we should be able to do this quickly. What are the items this time? This is a quiz. On the C3 table, it's still what to get a hit? And on the gun modifier for that hit, for that final modified to hit, is what? C5. What things might apply to the firer? And C6, the acquired is now what? We've taken 2 shots, so the acquired is what? And does the temp still apply? Sure it does, even though we probably put a few bricks out of place with that last shot. To heck with them. So here is my question to you. You ought to be able to look at this, fill it out, and then tell me what the highest die roll that will hit is. I have faith in you. I know you can do it. You already have, haven't you? I think you can hit P for pause if you want to. I'm not going to suggest it. You might want to experiment with that. But I think a P will pause this and you could fill it out. But I'm betting you've got it. Are you ready? I've been doing enough talking. So the modified to hit did not, the modified to hit number did not change, right? You ready? Still a 7 because there's still a 0 modifier on the gun, same as there was. So that first half, we know it wasn't going to change no matter what. 5, last time, we'd already found out that there's nothing on the firer base that applies now after that first turn of the arc change. We didn't change again. Nothing else that it applies. Only one that changed on C6 is our acquired is better. It's now a -2. The TEM is a +3, so it's a net of a +1. If it's a net of a +1 and our to hit is a 7, what's the highest die roll that will get a hit? It's 6, isn't it? Yay! So here we go. Here's the die roll. Oops, got to get our guys on there first. Just a second. They're all there. The die roll, 4 and 1 is 5. 5 plus 1 is 6. 6 is less than 7 or equal to it, so it is a hit. Now we're going to resolve the hit on what? Second part of the quiz. Since we've done all this a few times now, you should be able to do it. We're going to resolve the hit on what? On the IFT. Which column of the IFT? The 70 millimeter. And what modifiers apply to this die roll? Same as last time, none. And if you roll a 4-3, will that have an impact? Okay, you should be looking this up on the A7 yourself. IFT, 70 millimeter, 12 firepower. The modifiers to the roll are 0. When you rolled a straight 7, what you have the most chance to roll on any 2 dice roll. So it's a 1 morale check. Woohoo. Just to prove it, find the column. 7, 1 morale check. I'm not lying to you. Alright, so now we have the hero. It's a 1 morale check. If he rolls a 4-5, what happens? He was a 149, right? His morale went to 9. He just rolled a 9. Is that okay? No. +1 is a 10. He failed his morale check. Heroes don't break, they wound, so you roll a single die. And on 1 to 4, you flip the counter over, and he's a 1-3-8, so he's got less movement factors, but he's still heroic and can still kick your butt. But if he rolls a 5-6, you'll remove the counter. Now, the squad. If it rolls a 3-4, it's a 7, +1 is 8. That's higher than a 7-4-7, right? But they're fanatic. They're only pinned. And some people will try and tell you that fanatics don't pin. That is not true. They don't take a PAATC to attack a vehicle, but they will pin. All right? So, in our case, if you roll that subsequent die, if you rolled a 5-6, you just killed the hero, and you've pinned the squad, so you're doing good, and life is really good, right? So, all of that you should have learned. It's very similar to the mortars. The biggest difference is what you choose. We could have chosen to fire area, and then it would have worked exactly like what we had with mortars, right? Except for the covered arc, and except for the except for the fact that it had to be handled by a a 228, a crew, because guns have to have crews. But here's the other keys. You learned about covered arc change. You learned about um, the HE equivalency factor. You learned about using IFTs, and in fact, we learned about turrets. We learned about a number of things, didn't we? Now, one of the things that a lot of people will do is knowing how hard it is, because we had to roll some pretty phenomenal rolls to get those shots. They'll take, especially maybe on that turret change, they would have taken an area fire shot, and with that, they get the -1 ACO and life is good. Biggest thing, what they'll do is when they're firing against a stone building, they might fire the first time as area, the second time as area. They get that -2 acquired marker, and that's as high as your acquireds can go. You can fire on it 15 more times, it's still just a -2. But then on that third shot, after they've got the acquired marker, they might take the -2 and change with it to an infantry target type and just swap it for the big counter for area for the small -2. And then if they get the hit, there's no modifier and there's no halving of the firepower, right? Okay. So those are just things to think about. You'll develop your own tactics, but only if you play. And now you know how to fire mortars, how to fire guns, how to do fire lanes. You've learned an awful lot in these last 3 or 4, haven't you? Learned about covered arcs and changing them. You've learned about the difference on the charts. You've done a lot of things here. Congratulations. So the biggie for that is you've heard me talk about it. Now that you see how it works, go read Chapter C, sections 2 through 7 inclusive, and apply those things. Now, to be honest, some of those are deep, and they really wrote some of those, like that that one about the critical hits. That's buried in the paragraph. It gets kind of hard. So I'm hoping with what I did for you here, seeing how it works, this last 40 minutes has been, of good use of your time, and I will see you back here next time when we move on to whatever the next piece was. I kind of forgot. That was a start on firing guns. I guess I plan on teaching you a few more things about firing guns. Yeah, and I think you'll like it too. In fact, please let me know whether you like these or not. If I'm doing things right, tell me. If I'm doing some things that are annoying you, feel free to tell me that too. All right, so we'll see you next session.